Welcome back to this special collection of springtime memories. Abigail was a doll passed from little girl to little girl, always looking for a permanent home. Join me as my wife Janice narrates a touching story by Jennie Hutton, Abigale.
My name is Abigail, and my heart belongs to you. I came into being a long time ago. Over the years, 4 little girls have claimed me, each with a full and loving heart, but time and troubles have separated us. With each beginning, I hoped to stay forever, but it wasn't meant to be. I hope you will cherish and love me. Then maybe my dreams will come true, and I can be yours forever. The first little girl was Rebecca. She lived in a place called Georgia, a long ways from here. Her big white house was a lovely place to play in, with big window seats where we could sit and read on rainy days. We loved to dream the hours away in the low, forked branch of the big apple tree and plan tea parties on the big front porch. Oh, it was a lovely life. Rebecca's mommy was always fixing our hair and making us look pretty, or pushing us in the swing on the shady side of the house. But one day, a dreadful thing called Civil War started its sweep through our peaceful country. Before it was over, our lovely home was burned to the ground. I was hastily stuffed into a small carryall to go with Rebecca on a fast trip to be with her aunt in Virginia. Somewhere along the way, the bag was tossed in with the wrong luggage, and I was carried, dusty and tear-streaked, to a rough new settlement in Ohio. I lay for a long time in an old trunk and just about gave up ever being found. But one day I heard a rusty groan, and a shaft of sunlight warmed my aching heart. My goodness, what a pretty lady! Gentle hands removed me from the stuffy trunk, and Grandma Seton gently washed me up and fixed my hair. Then off went the dingy clothes to the wash bowl, and soon I was fresh and pretty as new. When Grandpa came in, Grandma said, "I found just the thing for Polly Ann's birthday. This pretty thing was in the old trunk at the spring house. Don't know where it came from. Isn't she lovely?" The next week I was given to a very happy little girl, Polly Ann, and a new chapter in my life began. Oh, that Polly! What times we had! She was careless and tomboyish, always on the run, but she loved me to pieces. My bonnet was never on straight, my dress was mussed, and my hair flew in the wind, just like Polly's. One day we traveled a short distance to visit her cousin, Anne Marie, a dear little girl with big blue eyes and long yellow curls. Sadly, she was ill and could not leave her bed. We stayed for a month. Polly cried when we had to leave, and I was sad too. When we were only a short ways down the road, she told her daddy to stop for a minute. Then she grabbed me, hugged me fiercely, and ran back to Anne Marie. She whispered to me, "I love you, and I'm so sorry." Then she thrust me in Anne Marie's arms and turned and ran. Between Polly's goodbye and my new mistress's hello, I was about to expire from all the tight hugs, but I loved it. That was a sweet and happy time, full of long, lazy days, but it was a sad time, too. I was so glad I was there when the pain was bad, or when the bed grew so tiresome. I could cuddle close, or flop over in a heap and bring a smile to that dear, pale face. When spring flowered the hillsides, my little mistress kissed me tenderly and told me to be good. Then she skipped away to a place called heaven. As I sat on the dresser, sad and lonely, I was cheered by the conversations of those who came and went. She was free from pain and in a beautiful place. Although I couldn't be with her, I was happy for her. A strange woman came one day and packed me away very carefully in a barrel with other toys. I was stored away for a long time. Then one day I felt the barrel move. Jostled and jiggled, I was carried by wagon, boat, and team to a faraway western place called Montana. The barrel was opened at a big church party, and someone gently placed me in the arms of little Beth. I was frightened at first. Her hair was rough and wind-tumbled, her dress was coarse, and she was barefoot. But when I looked into her awe-struck eyes, I loved her completely. After the party, we climbed into an old wagon and headed for the little homestead shack she called home. My days with Beth were full of chores and school, but we had so much fun. Together we picked choke cherries for delicious jelly, fished for bullheads, and rode on the hay. I confess that my clothes were worse for the wear, and I received several nicks and scratches that wouldn't fade. But when the long, cold winter came, a special day called Christmas warmed us all. I got a pretty new dress and bonnet just like Beth's, and her daddy made me a darling little bed. I confess I seldom used it, as Beth never slept unless I was in her arms. The years sped by, as they do, with more new clothes and lots of fun. Beth got married one busy day, and when she came to get her boxes, I got an awful lump in my throat. I would be so lonely again, but then she gently took me from my bed and cuddled me, then wrapped me in her shawl. I was going too. In her new little house, room was scarce, but I was enthroned on the old oak dresser where I viewed with joy all the happy hours. Seasons passed. A baby boy came, and then another, but no little girl to give me the love and cuddling I craved. One day a dreadful thing happened. One of the boys knocked me off the dresser. Luckily, I landed on the soft bed, but it scared Beth, so she gently packed me away with a final kiss and hug. Long years later, her niece found me when she came to help her clean closets. She said she'd love to have me for her little granddaughter Jackie for Christmas. Beth knew she would love and care for me and cherish me forever. Jackie, I'm so glad I belong to you. I hope we can always be together. I hate to be stuck in some old musky trunk, waiting, always waiting, for someone to love. I know we'll be the best of friends forever. You look a lot like my Rebecca. I love you already.
Abigail is the kind of doll you would find being cared for by a loving grandmother. Grandmas always hold a special place in our hearts. Here is a poem by Isabelle Jackson as she recalls grandmother's room.
My grandmother's room was a wonderful place, seasoned and warm like her lovely old face, blessed by her laughter and mellowed with tears, rich with memories of long ago years. When troubles beset me and life laid me low, grandmother's room was the place I would go. It wasn't a room full of treasures and such, just simple old pieces not worth very much. Yet if it had held but a table and chair, it would still be a haven, with grandmother there, ready to listen and glad to impart all of the wisdom and love in her heart. I don't climb the stairs to that room any more, for there's no one to answer my knock on the door. And yet I feel certain that God knew her worth, and that's why he took her away from this earth. He needed somebody with wisdom and love to counsel the angels in heaven above.
One of the tools used most often by grandmothers were their scissors. In verse, Evangelyn Cooley Chittum remembers Grandma's scissors.
They must have cut 1,000,000 miles of cloth, those old scissors I found in the loft. The handles were worn and no longer bright, but the blades and the points still had a good bite. I took them to Dad, and he shook his head. "She cut my hair with these scissors," he said, "and trimmed the carpet to put in my room, and cut bushels of rags for a rug on the loom. These scissors are made of mighty good stuff, 'cause the work they've been through has been plenty tough. Hundreds of quilt blocks and garments galore, and rags for the rugs that covered our floor. She trimmed all the wicks for our kerosene lamps. No wonder she suffered from arthritic cramps. Pictures for scrapbooks she cut for our paste. Nothing but nothing ever went to waste." Tenderly Dad held his mother's old shears, while he silently shed remembering tears. I thought of my grandma in her old rocking chair, dimly remembered seeing her there, patiently working a bright braided mat, clipping and stitching to make it lay flat. I thought I could see a smile on her face as I put her old scissors back in their case.
Everybody knows that there are 60 little minutes in an hour. It takes nearly 87,000 little seconds ticking by to make a day. And for every second and for every little minute, every hour, every day, every little flicker of my silly old ticker seems to say softly, why am I always yearning for Theresa when there is Peggy, Marguerite, and Mary Jane? Why does my heart keep burning for Theresa when I know that loving her is all in vain? Peggy is delightful and Marguerite is sweet, and a little smile from Mary Jane can make my day complete. Ah, but nevertheless there's only one I dream of, Theresa, Theresa, my own. There's plenty of others whose mothers are wonderful cooks, and 50 little nifties who beat her for looks. Why am I always yearning for Theresa, Theresa, when there are other girls that I could be around? Why does my heart keep burning for Theresa, Theresa, when she never builds me up but tears me down? What's her magic power that makes me want her near when she's near somebody else? From all the tales I hear, nevertheless there's only one I dream of, not Peggy nor Margie, it has to be Theresa I love, Theresa, Theresa.
That was Theresa, performed by the King's Men from the Fibber, McGee and Molly show back on January the 20th, 1948. Cathleen McKay and her family faced one of the most tragic losses imaginable as they watched their home go up in flames. What was Cathleen able to salvage from the ashes? Wonderful memories and a few burnt pennies.
It was the smell that aroused me from my bed. Burning, crackling, whooshing, whirring, the unmistakable sounds and smells of a house on fire. Different from a campfire or a brush fire was the stench of that all-consuming monster that could devour someone's world in a matter of minutes. Soon I could hear sirens, shouting, running feet, pounding on the door. "Ma'am, the house next door is on fire. It's out of control. But we'll water down your house and hope for the best. You'll have to evacuate." That night, while I waited for my house to burn down, my mind traveled backward over 60 years to a small farm in Vermont. Actually, it was the largest farm in the area, a beautiful house with several barns and outbuildings. It was invested with my father's dreams of living in the country, off the land, with no boss except the demands of a farmer's life. High hopes packed right alongside our belongings and a cat and 2 rabbits traveled with us from the city on a glorious day in May, the time of year when any dream seems possible. I wondered how different life in the country would be. Could I fit in? Would I make friends? Did I have the right clothes? As the seasons hurried toward winter, I found some of the answers. The wardrobe of a properly attired 12-year-old girl in 1921 boasted at least one navy blue sailor dress with white braid and a pleated skirt. Loose and long-waisted, it helped to hide the layers of insulation, from long underwear to woolen stockings, necessary to survive the snow and freezing temperatures of a New England winter. Up before dawn and shivering, I would grab my clothes and rush to the wood stove in the kitchen, which my mother had fired even earlier. Lacing up my high shoes, I would hear feet stomping on the front step. The door would open, and my brother Ray would come in rubbing his hands together. "The milk cans are on the wagon, ready to go," he'd say, sitting down to a big dish of steaming oatmeal. I would play with the pat of butter melting on top of my cereal, reluctant to leave the warm kitchen. Finally Ray would say, "Time to go to school." I would grab my books and the big plaid shawl to cover our legs and go into the frigid morning. The sun would just about be rising as Ray climbed onto the wagon seat beside me and took up the reins. We jogged along for about 5 miles, listening to the clanking milk cans until we reached Springfield. There we'd sell the milk and store the horse and wagon in a shed across the street from the high school. Thus went our school days while we looked forward to spring and a warmer early morning ride. Little did we know. "Fire! Fire! Get up! Get up!" forced its way into my brain, and I was on my feet racing for my sister's bed. I grabbed her and ran downstairs, outside into the snow. Standing barefoot and shivering in our nightgowns, we greeted that early Sunday morning in February. Everyone was out of the house when Ray set off across the crust, barefoot too, to run up the hill to my grandfather's farm for help. My mother kept running in and out of the burning house, trying to save what she could. I was terrified she would be trapped, and finally she had to stop. Because the house was brick, the insides burned first, and then the bricks caved in. The house was gone before help arrived, and only a few things had been saved. In one box which Ray had grabbed was my old doll, Gertrude. Later we learned that my mother had seen flames on the roof when she went outside earlier than usual. She never knew what it was that urged her to go out at that hour. We moved away, but the following summer I visited the site and poked around in the rubble. I'd had the idea that I might be able to find my piggy bank. Sure enough, under some bricks were the remains of that bank, and just a few burnt pennies. Phantoms of the past faded as I regained the present. In the morning I returned to my house. This time it hadn't burnt down, although it surely would have if the fire had been aided by any wind. Of course we had water damage, and the smoke smell lasted for weeks. Ignoring that, I went directly to my jewelry box. Carefully I removed a small felt bundle and opened it up. Out fell some small, round, charred objects. Looking closer, one would see that they were just a few burnt pennies.
Whether it was pennies, a nickel, or dime, an offering for the plate was expected every Sunday in church back in the good old days. But Audrey Corn's sister lost her offering. What would she do? Audrey was the snitch when Jennie was caught cheating in church.
A dime seemed like a lot of money back in the 1940s when I was growing up in Brooklyn, New York. But for 10 cents, along with one Kix cereal box top, a kid can send away for an official Lone Ranger secret compartment ring. My younger sister, Jennie, wanted that secret compartment ring bad enough to save every cent of her allowance for 2 whole weeks. When Jennie's ring finally came in the mail, I had to admit it was worth every penny. Jennie's ring was even better than the cereal ad had promised. Our friends couldn't believe it held a secret compartment until we showed them. Jennie loved that ring. She wore it everywhere, and she had it on that Sunday when she lost her dime for the collection plate. Papa always gave Jennie and me a dime apiece for the offering. He and Mama put in $1 each, a princely sum considering how little we had. I got a good feeling on Sundays when I dropped my money into the collection plate. Mama said sharing made people feel happy. Jennie liked sharing too. I'll never forget the stricken look on her face the Sunday she lost her dime. We were in church, so Jennie had to stay seated, but there was no law against moving her eyes or even her head, provided she didn't attract Mama's attention. Jennie checked the floor and her seat, and finally the folds of her dress. As a last resort, she even rifled through the pages of her prayer book. No dime. My sister grew increasingly agitated as the collection plate started down our row. I dropped in my dime. "Pass it on," I whispered to Jennie. But Jennie had other plans. I watched in disbelief as she pulled off her beloved Lone Ranger ring and furtively slipped it into the collection plate. It landed with a clink, and Jennie hastily handed the plate to the man next to her. "Cheater," I hissed at my sister. "Hush," Mama scolded me. But Mama hadn't witnessed Jennie's sin. I tried to explain, but we weren't allowed to talk during service, and the sound of my voice angered Mama further. "Quiet," she growled. Beside me, Jennie was craning her neck to follow the path of her offering. For one wild moment, I thought she might jump up and run after her ring. But the collection plate moved from the last row into the hands of the head usher, and Jennie slumped back into her seat. I could hardly wait for worship to end so I could tell Mama how Jennie had passed off her ring as money. But first, Mama had to line up to shake hands with the minister. And after that, she insisted on pausing every few steps to exchange pleasantries with other parishioners. "You're going to get it good when Mama finds out," I whispered to Jennie as we waited for Mama. But Jennie did not get it. In fact, just the opposite happened. Mama seemed uncommonly pleased by my little sister's generosity, and she said as much. Life was full of surprises back in the good old days.
If you didn't have any pennies, nickels, or dimes, you might end up in the poorhouse. Was there such a place? If you doubt, just listen as Faye Mackenzie remembers her grandmother, whose life was spent trying to avoid being sent to the poorhouse.
As a child, I truly believed there was a place called the Poorhouse. It was located somewhere in northern Wisconsin where we lived. Details were never supplied, but I assumed it was a large, dark, gloomy building with iron bars at the windows and surrounded by barren land. It would be desolate and cold. You would sleep on a bed of straw there, and they wouldn't feed you. But if you were there, it would only be because you were deserving of it. The poorhouse was where you were certain to end up if you lived beyond your means. "Do you want us all to have to go to the poorhouse?" my grandmother used to say. It wasn't a question. It was a statement, an answer to any silly request for an unnecessary item. In the post-Depression days of the 30s, living in the country, we knew no particular social class. We knew no one who had more than we did, and we knew no one who had less. Neat rows of trees lined the rural roads. Their orderly lines said they had been planted by the Civilian Conservation Corps, the CCC, as it was called. It was a time when men were struggling to secure positions that would allow them to support their families. These programs were set up by President Roosevelt to help the working class regain some measure of financial security. I was lucky. We lived in a nice log cabin built by my father, just a mile down the road from my grandmother's farm. My mother sewed my clothes, and my brother Jack and I shared a beautiful collie dog named Skippy. I was also the proud sole owner of a wooden bank that was shaped like a clock, for which I allowed myself the extravagance of coveting nickels. It apparently was my grandmother's duty to reinforce more conservative qualities in me. I once asked her, "Where is the poorhouse?" "Over the hill," she said, and that was all there was to that. She refused to be drawn into an in-depth discussion of the matter. Years later, I heard her say, "I always kept a $100 bill in the sewing machine drawer for emergencies." Whether this was a fact or not, I never knew. I never saw the bill, but I had no reason to doubt what she said. A sewing machine salesman had swept the countryside with a surefire sales pitch, a demonstration of how the wonderful Singer treadle sewing machine could actually sew through a wet shingle. And so it did. I supposed if a $100 bill, or any other treasure for that matter, lurked in the farmhouse, the sewing machine drawer would be the perfect place for it. Judicious planning and careful spending, however, were expected to prevent emergency situations. The desire for store-bought dresses and shoes was satisfied by daydreaming into a world of fantasy with the wish book. Sears, Roebuck and Company and Montgomery Ward, or as we called them, Sears and Sawbuck and Monkey Ward, catalogs became worn and dog-eared in short order. A great deal of shopping was done through mail order, but not for frilly dresses or patent leather shoes. It would most likely be for long winter underwear and warm snuggies. I dreamed for a lot of things, but dared not ask. The promise of the poorhouse was a powerful force. When we moved into town, my spending habits underwent no severe change. I remained frugal. One Christmas I was given 50 cents for shopping and allowed to go to the store by myself. There was a big little book for 10 cents for Jack, and a lovely genuine gold brooch for 15 cents for my mother. When I had finished my gift selection for all the family, I still clutched an Indian head nickel in my hand. The poorhouse people would never see me. I had never heard of anyone having or using charge accounts. The first time I went grocery shopping with my friend Wheezy, she left the store with a sack of groceries without any money changing hands. It was difficult to control myself until the bell on the door clanged behind us. "Wheezy," I said quietly so the grocer wouldn't hear me through the heavy wooden door, "you didn't pay him." "Oh," she said lightly, "we don't pay here." That was all she said about the whole incident, but I certainly knew where she and her family were going to have to go someday. I drove past my grandmother's farm today, my purse full of charge cards and driving a car that won't be mine for a few more payments. And suddenly I missed the good old days, when we saved first, bought later. We took better care of our things then. After all, we counted our pennies and thought a long time before purchasing anything. The farm is empty now, and Grandma is gone, but her basic, honest philosophy remains. "Do you want to go to the poorhouse?" was not a threat. There were some things more important than luxuries that money could buy. It was to live decently and realistically. Besides, wasn't love among the family members the most valuable possession of all?
I hope you've enjoyed this look back at those springs in the good old days. This is Ken Tate, editor of Good Old Days magazine, reminding you to always remember the best. And God bless.